If you love Barbie, then this movie is for you. And if you hate Barbie, proceed with caution. Barbie 2023 was written and directed by Greta Gerwig, and it stars Margot Robbie and what is known as stereotypical Barbie. In this movie, stereotypical Barbie basically faces an existential crisis where she basically questions her world, so she goes over to the real world to find her true identity. And with that, politics and wacky shenanigans ensue. I absolutely love Greta Gerwig as a filmmaker, with her previous stuff like Lady Bird and of course Little Women 2019 being one of my favorite movies of 2019 at the time. And I gotta say, I am a girl who absolutely loves Barbie. I played with Barbies ever since I was a little girl. And the reason why I'm here is because I hate Barbie. I absolutely love the movie. It's extremely funny with hilarious dialogue and some immaculate directing and production design. Some of the sets in Barbie Land are legitimately Oscar worthy, and if this movie does not win an Oscar for production design, God help us all. The movie is extremely self-aware of how ridiculous it is when it comes to its heavy-handed basis of politics, patriarchy, and of course gender equality, which I did not expect from a movie like Barbie. Now obviously I knew this was going to be something completely ridiculous and outside of what Barbie really was going to be, because if this was some kind of stupid little family movie with slapstick comedy and all that stuff with no real message, then this movie would have been boring as hell and it would have not been as successful. And I gotta say, the marketing team definitely knew what they were doing with this film, as of how well it's doing in the box office at the moment. The movie is such a fun time. Performances are absolutely incredible. Margot Robbie is amazing. This might be one of her best performances yet. I really hope she gets an Oscar nomination for this. Same thing with Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling, personally, is my favorite performance. I'm so sorry, Luigi, but Ryan Gosling, what a hunk of a man. Seriously. I can't believe how funny he can be, seriously, because I am so used to seeing Ryan Gosling in all these dramatic movies such as Blade Runner 2049 and Drive, that seeing him in this film as Ken is just kind of crazy. The characters in Barbie and Ken are actually really well done, despite their obvious political differences. They're both dolls, and they were made from kind of a feminist company, so it kind of is understandable on why they think this way, because, again, they're feminist dolls, created by other humans who were more like feminists as well. So I actually found it really funny that everyone in Mattel was just a bunch of middle-aged men. Okay, seriously though, but going into this movie is not really what you expect. This movie is not just some visually dazzling comedy that, is just lighthearted fun. It's actually a giant middle finger towards politics and Mattel, and also Barbie and Ken, for that matter. Both women and men are kind of portrayed as idiots in this film. It's not really picking a side when it comes to this movie, Near the end it kind of does, but even then it still seems doesn't seem all that one-sided despite what a lot of other people think. And speaking of the giant middle finger, a lot of its humor is extremely adult. There are a couple jokes where legitimately adults will get but children won't get. This movie's rated PG-13, yet it feels more mature than frickin' Oppenheimer at times, Because of how many dirty jokes there are. Instead of oh, I'm gonna beat you off, they say, I'm gonna beat you off. Beach, not beat. And at first I heard beat, and I was like, what? But then I listened to it, and I was like, oh, beach, oh my god, they went there? They even joke about how Barbie and Ken don't have, genitals, or obviously these real-life toys don't have those kinds of things. So I can definitely see the joke there, but the fact that the writers even went there is kind of daunting. This is a very ambitious and bold movie. The budget is $120 $20 to $145 million, and it's extremely dirty and extremely political, if anything. And this movie does not shy away from politics. If anything, it just pokes a giant middle finger at politics, which is very risky. But I knew something heavy like this was going to happen when it comes to Barbie, because I knew who was behind it, I knew the talent behind it, and I knew that this film was going to be more than just a visually dazzling comedy. Which, speaking of visually dazzling, the cinematography is excellent. Rodrigo Prieto does an amazing job with some of these shots. The bright pinks and blues and the built up, like the bright lighting and all this stuff, and even the musical performances are actually pretty good, especially with Ryan Gosling, like we already just said. The costume design is helped tremendously by Jacqueline Duran. She does an amazing job with complementing the feel and the sets of this entire world. Obviously, the real world is also very bright and colorful as well, but it is also a very disrespectful world, with both genders going hand in hand. Neither gender is really portrayed as a good being or something like that. I would like to talk about the whole controversy stating how this movie quote unquote hates men. Yes, this movie is definitely portrayed as feminism, but even then, the movie still does a pretty good job of making the feminine characters look kind of stupid. So the movie doesn't really glamorize women, if anything, which I thought was cool. And a lot of people say that it it glamorizes women, or women have no problems or something like that, which isn't really true. Barbie is constantly downgraded as this fascist toy, even by a moody teenager, which she's obviously not used to. So that scene in particular was actually kind of funny, because it was just oh wow, they're basically dropping a huge middle finger towards Mattel. Another thing as well is that this movie really tries to be a so bad it's good film, you know? And I've actually heard a lot of comparisons towards other projects such as She-Hulk and Velma, obviously two very different projects. The difference here is that She-Hulk lacks a story whatsoever, whereas Velma already takes a beloved IP and pretty much changes it into something that isn't even Scooby-Doo, whereas Barbie is exactly what I thought it was going to be, depending on the names attached to the project, and of course, it's Barbie. This is a very risky movie, and I am very impressed to see what Greta Gerwig does, and it really impresses me how far she's come as a filmmaker, with how she's went from $10 million to Lady Bird all the way up to $120 to $140 million with Barbie and Warner Brothers. It's really impressive, I gotta say. And once again, all the other performances are really good, you know. Everyone is actually giving it their all. Will Ferrell, Michael Cera, everyone else is actually really good in this film. But speaking of which, Michael Cera and Will Ferrell are kind of underrepresented. They do exactly what they need to do, but they're just kind of there. Will Ferrell starts off as an antagonizing force, but then the antagonizing force, of course, moves over to Ken, which I was a little more invested in personally. And I'm going to be completely honest here. Michael Cera's character is kind of flat, personally. I know the joke was supposed to be, oh, it's Alan. And that's it. That's just it. It's Alan, and he's there. But the fact that he beats up a bunch of construction workers at one point really threw me off, because I don't really understand why they needed that scene in particular. But overall, Barbie is a very, very ambitious film, a very risky movie, and overall, it is a lot of fun. And it is a pretty funny movie. Some gags are though, you gotta admit. As someone who hates Barbie, I really did have a lot of fun with this film. I just didn't think it was perfect. I still think Lady Bird is Greta Gerwig's best work, but I do think this is Greta Gerwig's most impressive work, and that's a difference. Overall, Barbie is a great time. I absolutely adored it. Despite its issues involving the whole gender inequality thing and the kind of self-indulgent nature behind the feminism, it's actually a really fun ride, and it's very easy to just get sucked in and just have fun with it because of how self-aware the movie really is. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie. Not as much as Peach did, but it is still a very fun watch. I am very happy for Greta Gerwig and the fact that she was able to even get this movie done. Overall, I definitely give this movie a cloud flower. My personal choice is a rock mushroom. A floaty on the outside, but a heavy rock on the inside is essentially what this movie is. I actually wanted to take Luigi out to the cinema to see this movie, but he wasn't too eager on it, and I can kind of see why. Even though I try to explain why I think this movie isn't like derogatory, anti-man or whatever, something like that. That's just my opinion. There will be some people who don't really enjoy it because it's obviously a very feminist movie. So, really, that's okay. In the end of the day, it's controversy and it does a really good job at profiting towards that kind of thing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Tune in next time as Luigi and Waluigi reviews Oppenheimer.